Hey everybody. So today we're going to talk about transit Pluto. And we're going to talk about it. I've done some videos about like the US's Pluto return, and I've done videos about, I did a video last week about Pluto transiting like the major angles and solar arc Pluto transiting the major angles. So I got a couple questions from people, or a couple comments. I guess they weren't really questions, more like comments about Pluto transiting certain planets in their chart right now. So I figured I'd do a video about that, specifically conjunctions. At some point, maybe after this one, we'll talk about other planets, or other not other planets, other aspects like Pluto squares, or transit Pluto squaring a planet or opposing a planet or whatever. I do think the conjunctions are the most important. Generally speaking, I do think that conjunctions are the most important aspect. That's in a natal chart, in transits, in synastry. I do think it does tend to be the most important. So this video will focus on conjunctions specifically. Transit Pluto conjunct some natal planet. That doesn't mean that I don't think the squares and the oppositions and the trines and the sextiles and the quincunx, I think all of those are important too. Even the more minor aspects, I think they're important, but I do tend to think that the conjunctions are the most important. They feel like, to me, they've always felt like the most dynamic of all of them. Opinions are like assholes. You might disagree. So this will focus on conjunctions, transit Pluto conjunct natal planets. And as somebody who has had transit Pluto beating the shit out of most of my natal planets from the time I was born through maybe a couple years ago, I am intimately familiar with how this little fucker works in transit via conjunction. Yeah. So Pluto, when Pluto transits, just in general, Pluto transits, they are transformation. Like whatever it touches, whatever Pluto touches in any aspect to a natal planet, it's going to transform it. Again, I do think the most dynamic of these is the conjunction, because it's literally up another planet's ass. So it's it's actually merging or blending with that planet, right? So that's kind of what the conjunction does. And yeah, it just feels like it packs the strongest punch in this case. So let's talk about like transit Pluto conjunct the sun. Conjunct the natal sun. Of course, you don't want to take the entire chart into account. It does depend on what house this is falling in. Obviously, any other aspects the sun makes. But generally, you are looking at a time that your sense of self, your vitality, your concept of ego, what that is, identity, it all shifts. It all changes. It is not the same after transit Pluto fucks your sun. It's not the same. It's not. You will also want to look at, and this goes for any conjunction or any transit period. I'm talking about the conjunctions here, but any transit period. Like, okay, if you've got transit Pluto conjunct the natal sun, you will want to look at what house cusp Leo falls in your chart. That house will also be impacted. So, okay, just for instance, just to give you for instance, when transit Pluto was conjunct my natal sun, this would have lit up my 12th house. Sun is in the 12th house, so it would have lit that up. And it also would have lit up the 9th house, which has Leo on the cusp. So both of those houses, areas of life, were affected at that time too. And transformed, which is very apt. But that would, if you've got transit Pluto conjunct the sun, definitely take a look at what house cusp Leo falls on. If Leo happens to be intercepted, it kind of lights up that interception. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier. It just means you might be able to really feel Leo energy in that house where it's normally intercepted. And the same thing would be the case for any of, like the next one. Let's say you've got transit Pluto conjunct the moon, the natal moon, which is a real fucking pain in the ass one. If I'm honest, it's a real pain in the ass. It's a real, I'm glad it's over. But the same thing would be the case there. You'd look at the moon, where wherever the moon falls in the chart, wherever the transit Pluto is conjunct the moon, that house will be impacted, and then the house that has Cancer on the cusp will also be impacted as well. But when you've got transit Pluto conjunct the moon, you're looking at transformation in the way that you handle your emotions, in the way that you feel things, perhaps in the way that you need to be, the way that you nurture yourself, the way that you nurture in general. The sensitivity with the moon. I actually found during this transit, on the back end of it, this is just me personally, I found that a sensitivity was kind of cut off a little bit. And I think that could have been because there was so much sensitivity as transit Pluto was applying to the natal moon. It was like once it started separating, the sensitivity kind of got cut off. And it was really actually nice that it did, because this is a very transit Pluto conjunct the moon. There is a lot of sensitivity there, especially in the applying phase. So yeah, there's usually some kind of change with that too. You may not end up getting cut off like that though. It might function differently for you, but there usually is a transforming of how you're sensitive and how you feel sensitive. Even intuition could be heightened too. Definitely transforming the way that you function with this, or how you process it. That seems very possible. I know I've seen some things like where when you see transit Pluto, say, conjunct the natal sun or conjunct the natal moon, I've seen people get worried that like a parent might die. I wouldn't say that that's not possible, but I certainly wouldn't look at it like that. There would have to be so many other indicators in the transits and in real life, like some sort of real life basis, like, oh, my mother is sick right now, she's been very ill, for my mind to even go that way. Pluto really is, a lot of people see Pluto transits and they think death. I think of it in a more metaphorical way, like a more metaphorical death and rebirth, not really actual physical death. It can be, but I wouldn't automatically go that way with it, for sure. I mean, there would have to be so many other things going on for my mind to go that way. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, I don't think that I have the card for Mercury out, but okay, so transit Pluto conjunct natal Mercury. This is going to be transforming your mind, your perception. Your perception might shift. All of those kinds of things. The way you learn might transform. The way you communicate might transform. There could even be like communication breakdowns. Though if that happens over the course of this transit, it's probably, or even, and I say this carefully, even like mental breakdowns could happen. It is possible. Not guaranteed, not universal, but it is possible. And if it does happen, if you do find that you've got like transit Pluto conjunct natal Mercury, and you do find that this happens, or something like this feels like it's happening, it's transit Pluto is trying to transform something about the way that you communicate, about the way that you think, about the way that you share information, all of these sorts of things. So it's supposed to happen. Fighting it usually makes it worse. I know that's not a whole lot of comfort, but you might notice certain themes like that coming up when transit Pluto is conjunct natal Mercury. And then you'd want to look at the house cusps that have Virgo and Gemini on the cusp. So you're actually looking at 3 houses here. Not only the house where transit Pluto is conjunct natal Mercury, but also the houses where Gemini and Virgo are on the house cusps. All of those areas of life, those houses' areas of life, are going to be lit up, which will help flesh things out even further, as you know how all of this really goes and plays out in different areas of life. It's very, very, very important to take this part into account. This will help give you an idea of which way to go with what areas of life are kind of going to be transformed or die and be reborn with transit Pluto involved. Okay, so let's say you've got transit Pluto conjunct natal Venus. This is like transforming of your values, of what you love and how you need to be loved, how you give love. The way that you are diplomatic might transform. The way that how you attract things, or how you are attractive, if that, and I don't mean like necessarily physically attractive, I just mean attractive in general. That might be transforming. Let's see, your how feminine, notions of femininity, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, those could transform. And that could be in a male or female chart, or just kind of how you relate to that part. We all have masculine and feminine qualities. How you relate to the feminine part of you might transform a little bit during transit Pluto conjunct natal Venus. Not always easy, but necessary. You would definitely want to look at the house cusps that have Taurus and Libra on them. These houses will also be impacted along with the house where transit Pluto is conjunct natal Venus. Definitely take those into consideration as well. Okay. Transit Pluto conjunct natal Mars. So this is like, this one, this is going to transform your drive, your impulses, your instincts, your independence. You might see an increase in independence, in personal independence. You might see a decrease in it. It really depends on what's going on in the entire chart. You might see an increase in drive or a decrease in drive. Also depends on what's going on in the entire chart. Notions of masculinity might be transforming. Again, this could be in a male or a female chart. But the way that you relate to masculinity will probably transform a little bit, at least. Libido could be increased or decreased. Again, it depends on what's going on in the entire chart. Anger, things with anger and rage could even come up. Issues with that. Needing to release it, or the way that you relate to it might change. Like if you're normally a really pissed off person, maybe that shifts a little bit. Or if you are somebody who maybe doesn't get pissed off that much or that easily, perhaps transit Pluto conjunct natal Mars, maybe you really start popping off. It just kind of depends on everything going on already. But you would definitely want to look at the house cusps that have Aries on the cusp. And if you do both rulerships, like I do, traditional and modern, you could look at also what house cusp Scorpio is on, since Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio. But yeah, there's usually a lot of power with the Pluto conjunct Mars. There's a lot of power, and it's not always. Sometimes it can be quite a struggle, and sometimes it's not as much of a struggle. This is actually one planet that Pluto has not been conjunct in my life. This is like one of the only ones. So I don't know this one intimately, but I do have a feeling it's probably, I think it could be very difficult, but it could also be probably very beneficial once it's done. Yeah, I think it could be. Anyway, I'm going to get going because this one got kind of long. I can do the other ones in another video. Yeah, a Pluto transit, you are looking at things being transformed and things coming out into the open that maybe haven't been, since Pluto can be kind of shadowy too. Pluto wants to let things go. It does, but it doesn't do this easy. It does not do this easy. It doesn't let go easy, but it does know that it should. But yeah, transformation, power, packing that planet with power. Usually is a power, the feeling of power. Doesn't necessarily mean you feel powerful, but Pluto does like power that planet, that natal planet via conjunction. Okay. Well, if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Paternal Astrology on Instagram. If you want to like or subscribe or whatever the fuck people do with videos on YouTube, you can find us by searching for Let's Fuck With Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you're already watching this on YouTube, you can like and subscribe down below. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Fuck With Astrology. Just don't be an asshole. Like, we want you there, but just don't be a dick. There was a real dick this past week. So don't be a dick. We're all pretty nice there. There's no reason for that. It's actually kind of funny. They tripped the fuck out. But anyway. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.